Kate Milavalcha, welcome to Irish Granny Helen. And we are finishing our Saturday book with video number 4 of The Vatican Secret, UFOs, Alien Technology, and the Hidden Archives by Andre Halatis. When last we were discussing this book, we were talking about my argument with Nostradamus. Coming up, stay tuned. It's in our session that Deborah Lupien and I did. We had a conversation with Nostradamus. It was very interesting. So there's a lot of testimony, allegedly, that the Vatican is aware of all the tech we mentioned in video 3 and keeping it hidden. And so the big question is, what would it take to get them to reveal it? What kind of conditions would have to exist before they would reveal it? Well, pretty much it's obvious that they're dropping hints. They probably reveal it gradually. Like the cognitive discoveries and recent medical discoveries, and just bit by bit by bit, pacing the introduction of it to control the shock, a little bit like, allergy shots. Give you a little bit over a period of time. There would introduce it as revolutionary new discoveries or studies of humankind. I don't think the book says this, and I kind of agree. I don't think they'd say, hey, guess what the ETs told us? I don't think they would do that. The idea of mind and consciousness and a connection with the field, this is not new. This could be worked into the conversation. Plato talked about it. Carl Jung talked about the collective consciousness. The collective unconsciousness. Remote viewers connect to it. The Akashic field. We're talking essentially the same thing. The ether, the information in the field. This is an idea that has been batted about forever. It has roots in many spiritual and philosophical traditions. It would not be a big shock for them to kind of take the next step in advancing the information that they have about that. But cutting edge science is confirming a lot of the basic theories on the collective unconscious. The physicist Erwin Laszlo, who is all about the quantum field information, verifies this. A key part of quantum physics is part of the Princeton investigation by Michael Persinge, I think is how it's pronounced, that the mind of an antenna that captures information from the mind is an antenna that captures information from the global quantum field. So metaphorically speaking, that your mind is always able to tune in to the information around us. We're in a soup of information. They call it the global quantum field. I like to call it the soup. And that given the right technique, you can tune your consciousness in and connect with that and access information, which that's what remote viewers basically do. The brain is shown to work through electromagnetic neural network connections. That's how it does. This is all key parts of quantum physics. And it could interact with non-local phenomena. There's nothing to stop it but our inability to understand it. It could do that. There's a thing called orchestrated objective reduction. This is a physics theory, by a guy called Roger Penrose and another guy, Stuart Heineroff. They believe that consciousness emerges at the quantum level through microtubules in brain cells. The theory implies, they're still speculating that consciousness begins inside the brain. I don't necessarily agree with that theory, because what do I know? But a lot of great philosophers also would not have believed in that theory. The consciousness emerges from the brain, but on the quantum level. This theory implies that the mind is part of a larger system. Now, that I would agree with. Universal consciousness network. The discovery of the neural interface technology could give conscious access to this layer out there, this network of information and communication. It's now a plausible hypothesis. It's no longer Star Trek. It's now mainstream respected scientists are working on this. Some projects are trying to connect the brain and computer interfaces. Now that's getting a little bit scarier. Could this lead to interaction with higher levels of consciousness? And I wrote in my own little aside here is, do we really want Elon Musk in charge of this? This is Bond level evolution. Bond level villain evolution. Technologies are being explored based on MRI and quantum transmission to access information through quantum entanglement and advanced neural networks. So we're all going to pretend that we understand that 100%. What they're saying is they're using advanced tech that accesses quantum, what's the word I want? I'm going to use the word behavior. I don't think that's the right word, but quantum interaction, and our neural makeup to create these connected networks. It's like we're tuning our brain in to get our consciousness to connect. At MIT and CERN, CERN, they're already exploring the interaction between consciousness and quantum phenomena. This is not speculation. This is not hypotheses. They're actually doing the studies. And this connects to the Vatican, by the way, because hints about this have been roiling around under the surface for a long time, that the Vatican had access to these ideas or actual tech. But this would lead to the transfer of information without the need for physical connection, telepathic information. It has revolutionary implications for the human mind and the interaction with the cosmos. It could lead excuse me, to cooperative global decision-making or the threat of global control. It could move us from identifying only individually and towards a shift from separation and selfishness to a sense of unity and interconnectedness. And then you get onto the topic of a hive mind, and I always find that unsettling. So, however, who would have access to it? How would it be regulated? Who would control it? What would the security protocols be? Would there be a supranational body? In other words, beyond nations? Would there be some sort of global, I don't know, or cosmic even, governing body in charge of all of this? How would we protect privacy and avoid manipulation of information, like, cosmic propaganda? That's a thing they'll come up with. So the next part of the book talks about new energy and society, and to now have control of energy sources. We know that this has determined the fate of civilizations in the past and is determining our fate right now. So being in charge of the energy sources would influence technological development and global economies, the structures of power, and it would all circle around free, unlimited power. That would just change all those dynamics. We'll put an end to resource conflicts. If we had free energy, we wouldn't be fighting over who owned the oil. It would affect climate change, that's for sure. It would affect the environment. It would make fossil fuels obsolete and even harmful. But there are strong economic interests in keeping the status quo. There's evidence and testimony from people. There have been documents seen, testimony heard, that the Vatican has information and devices about advanced energy. That doesn't necessarily mean they have access to it. It means they might know about how to go about it, or experiments in the past. Could be from ETs. This is where the book gets very speculative. It spends a lot of time saying some might be extraterrestrial. Well, some might not. I am not negating the possibility. I wouldn't want anyone to think that. I'm very open-minded about this, but I'm also not gullible. And I think it pays to be skeptical. It pays to use discernment and critical thinking. And, it's the old, if you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. There might be a much more terrestrial explanation. It's not that I want to reject the notion, but just, caution. There are members of the clergy and independent researchers, people whose names are known, who've been willing to come out publicly and talk about it. That Father Ernesti, the Pellegrino Ernesti, and physicist Paul Laviolette. Now, I've mentioned I looked up Ernesti, and he's problematic. I won't go into it here, but it would be enlightening if you wanted to look up, just Google him, because he's very controversial. And if you Google him, you get a Wikipedia thing, and it talks about his chronovisor, I think it's called. I don't know what to say. Now, Paul Laviolette, is actually a well-respected physicist. So they talk about zero-point energy. This is the theory of inexhaustible sources of energy that are achieved by using quantum fluctuations of vacuum. I think we said that sentence before and didn't help to repeat it. I still don't truly understand it. They're reported to have been studied from captured ET materials. And certainly shake up the oil companies. Stanton Friedman believed that some of these kinds of materials were found at Roswell. Tesla did experiments on free energy from UFO aircraft, is the rumor, and with propulsion in mind. These vehicles that were captured crashed and picked up in pieces, is really the theory. There's no indication of how they got there. There's no propulsion system. No, and they don't use conventional physics, and they did things that defied conventional physics. There's talk about electromagnetic field generators and the conversion of gravity and using energy resonance. All of that is theoretical, but we know for sure that finding an alternative energy source of free energy would have a huge immediate impact by fossil fuel companies. The speed of travel would be changed overnight, even off planet. Telecommunications would be revolutionized. And, we like to say, the book says, they would enter a new era of abundance and progress. Would we? So fossil fuels, the discovery of electricity made the oil lamp obsolete. Cars replaced the horse. Who's to say cars can't be replaced? If fossil fuels were replaced, geopolitics and economics would be really shook up. First of all, they'd have to stop fighting over the oil overnight. That would be interesting. Power plants could be replaced by devices to draw quantum energy or electromagnetic fields or electrogravitics. And this is a whole theory by a guy called Thomas Townsend Brown. But we would have non-polluting unlimited supplies of clean energy for all, free. Combustion engines gone overnight. They'd be replaced by propulsion systems based on self-generating energy fields. There would be no need for a centralized grid, which comes into the conversation later here. There'd be no need for wiring in buildings. No need for refueling stations, no more gas stations. I suppose you could keep the 7-Eleven, the AM, PM mini mart, but you could get rid of the gas station. It would lower maintenance costs for vehicles. It could provide this notion, this is really a neat idea, greenhouses powered by unlimited energy so that there would be no cost. They could grow food anywhere. If you could afford to set up greenhouses anywhere, because you didn't have to worry about how much it took to heat them or cool them or light them, that would lower the cost of food because you could grow stuff anywhere. There would be a reduction in air pollution and therefore global warming, maybe recovery for the planet. Oceans could regenerate. Things like natural disasters like oil spills and pipeline explosions, mining disasters, those could be done away with. Coal, I'm talking coal. There'd be huge industrial resistance because they benefit enormously from the status quo. I mean, we know that. Tesla's, for example, they would push back. So this is an example. Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower. I think it was on Long Island. It was somewhere on the East Coast. It was a tower for transmitting wireless power globally. And it was blocked and defunded because it threatened it was built and ready to go, but it threatened the economic model based on, taking fuel from the earth. Victor Schomburger came up with a fluid dynamics and a water energy system. His research disappeared. And he was forced to work for the Third Reich. He was German, and during the war, he was forced to work for them. And all of his research that would have helped people disappeared. If the Vatican had this kind of knowledge, why would they want to withhold it? What prevents them from sharing this kind of knowledge? So a question the book didn't raise, which I think needs to be asked. The book talked about, what are they afraid of? Are they afraid of the reaction of people? But they didn't ask this question: who's threatening them or bribing them to stay quiet? Is it to their advantage to stay quiet because they're being threatened to shut up, or are they being paid to shut up? There's a need for without the need for a grid, a central grid, cities could be self-sufficient. There's some interesting ideas here. And as he got into a discussion of these ideas, he talked less and less about the Vatican. And I will tell you when I started editing out some stuff, and I'll tell you why I did it. He talks about an urban ecosystem that's self-sufficient, that everything is right there where it needs to be. It would store its own energy without the need for a central grid. Now, how would it do that? It would require the integration of technology to generate, accumulate, and distribute energy. So it could use solar energy or other surface materials to capture energy and transform environmental energy. It could harvest energy from air or space. It just depends on what new source of energy is developed. Some of these are theorized and they're not really applied by us, but the solar idea is really interesting because they would be incorporating the ability to capture solar energy right into the construction of the buildings. Cities could capture the energy in the infinite capacity batteries that store and distribute energy where minimal energy is lost. 0 point energy generators would extract energy from the quantum vacuum, but what would be extrapolated from a situation like that is no more energy bills. I mean, I heard a guy talking yesterday, the day before, that he paid $700 for his electricity bill last month and this month. There would be no cost to industry to run in an indefinite amount of energy use. It would cost them nothing. They could increase production. There'd be no dependence on the importing of energy resources, so it could lower or end global competition for control of fossil fuels. The oil industry and governments and multinationals, of course, would put up a big resistance. Whoever controls energy controls the globe. But the concern is that the Vatican is not sharing what it knows because of pressure. That's what I think. Fuel needs oh now I can read it. Fuel needs, the need for fuel, constrains progress in advancing spaceflight. They're limited by how much fuel they can carry. It's believed that anti-gravitational systems are already being back-engineered. Bob Lazar wrote a book about it. Area 51, he worked there with Element 115 and talked quite a bit about this whole propulsion thing. It would allow space travel without rockets if they didn't have to carry fuel. Even in the 30s and 40s, the Nazis were studying the advances of propulsion. Operation Paperclip is when the US government took all these German and Nazi scientists, brought them to US, including the first head of NASA, SS officer Werner von Braun. The theory is that you can cancel or reverse gravity by generating negative energy fields or by exploiting magnetic resonance with the curvature of space-time. So simple. For example, the Byfield-Brown effect. This is from Thomas Townsend Brown, we mentioned earlier. This is the application of a strong electrical field to a charged capacitor, and he showed that this could generate propulsive thrust. Mostly this has been ignored by mainstream science, but tests suggest that there is something to it. There is solid science behind it. In 2004, we talked about this before, the Tic Tac UFO off the coast of San Diego with the whole Navy watching, displayed enormous speeds. I think they said that they went from 80,000 feet, which would be outer space, to right into the ocean in seconds. Huge speed. They showed no sign of any kind of propulsion device. They looked like a flying tic-tac, gigantic flying tic-tac. They showed no heat emission signs. So they speculate, were they using advanced anti-gravity? And Pentagon has confirmed this. It's rumored that there is secret development going on, that some military insiders claim that they've already developed this sort of propulsion using top secret programs, dark money, hush hush, back engineering UFOs. Free energy would really affect transportation of objects on the Earth. Think about this. Planes could just lift off vertically. They wouldn't need a runway. Cars would levitate over the roads, which would limit congestion, limit wear and tear on infrastructure. You wouldn't wear out your tires. You could do intercontinental travel instantly, transoceanic travel in minutes. They wouldn't need to refuel in space. They would simplify the logistics for space exploration and colonization. Philip Corso, the intelligence officer at Roswell, who wrote the book The Day After Roswell, says that anti-gravity has been developed by the military. That's allegedly according to him. Colonel Charles Halt, now that name might ring a bell. I went, oh, I remember him. I covered a book a long time ago called Left at East Gate, which was about a 1980 incident on a military base in England. The United States and the Royal Air Force shared this military base outside Rendlesham Forest. I forget the name of the base. It's been so long, but it's on the tip of my tongue. It'll come to me. Rendlesham Forest. What was the name of the base? Well, like one half they shared facilities, but half of it was British and half of it was American. And in 1980, around Christmas time, there was a whole UFO incident at this sensitive, highly sensitive military base. And the head of the base, Colonel Charles Halt, he saw the whole thing. He was privy to this UFO event and talked about it, wrote about it. They described UFOs moving without sound, with impossible acceleration. There was a leaked document from something called Operation Solar Warden, a secret space program using fleets of anti-gravitational craft for interplanetary missions. I don't know if this was in the works or proposed, a project upcoming. Insider, I hesitate to call them whistleblowers, because whistleblowers, you feel like there's a whole lot more public face to it. But insiders, people who've worked in these things, claim that the Vatican knows all about all of this and is complicit in the development of these kinds of propulsion, and they're keeping it secret. Odd to think of the Vatican being involved in the development of, physics and engineering projects, but they have access to the best. Do they really control all of this, or are they being controlled? That's my question. So the book talks about travel to Mars and the moon and beyond. So this technology may be closer than we realize, or like already happening and we haven't been told. It could happen with the admission that they have that anti-gravitational propulsion. The efforts of Musk don't indicate it, it doesn't indicate that he has it, because his rockets are rockets using fuel. So, okay. Bob Lazar says that it's been tested and efforts to develop it are ongoing. So we have some conflicting testimony. There's a guy called Dr. Salvatore Pace. He has a patent for electromagnetic propulsion device that's really obvious that somebody is studying it, because he patented this thing. And it's not just, I have an idea. He had these specific drawings of it, the schematics. Rocket technology depends on chemical fuel. It's inefficient, expensive, and a huge amount is needed often, and it really limits how far you can go, how fast you can go, how well you can go. Free energy would change that, but more likely a whole and different kind of advanced propulsion would just change everything. Paul Hellyer. Now, I think I'm going to do a video about Paul Hellyer. He's one of my particular heroes. Maybe not so well known to Americans, but Canadians will recognize his name. He 3 times former Canadian Minister of Defense. That's like Secretary of Defense. The Pete Hegseth of Canada. And every Canadian watching is killing themselves laughing. He is antithetical to the persona of Pete Hegseth. A very calm, quiet, rational, thoughtful, smart individual. He said that craft now exists. Now, he died in 2021. So before that, he said craft now exists that can operate without conventional fuel using advanced gravitational systems. He said a lot of things, and I won't spoil it. I'll save it for a different video. But documents and insider testimony, he is one of the insiders, and it would be hard to be more of an insider than Paul Hellyer. They claim that progress has been made, that projects exist to develop these propulsion systems, that this is all underway with suggestions of ET back engineering. If space transportation became a reasonable possibility, Mars and the moon would be the most likely targets. This would be a big opportunity for private companies. You bet they're going to get in on it. They're working on the idea of making Mars into a colony, a reality. And NASA, we've seen recently, they have the Artemis program. That's about creating permanent moon bases. That's really what they're up to with that. Lunar stations would be used as launch pads for further space exploration. It's not the only thing they want to do. Long term, they have plans to terraform Mars. Okay, in my opinion, this is a terrible idea until we clean our own house. Terraforming, we'll talk more about, but it involves interfering with the resources and environment that you're in for your own purposes. How much thought are they putting into the effect they're going to have on the environment there? Probably none, because we haven't thought about it here. That would be my point. There's a hope of creating access to resources on other planets. That's what this whole lunar thing is. Set up a station and mine the moon, right? Technology for travel would be pretty cool if you're of a mind to go into outer space. There are proposed ways to do this. You can manipulate space-time to create gravitational distortion fields. This allows extreme acceleration without hurting people. They talk about 5Gs and the pilot is like pulled against the back of the chair as they accelerate. That kills people if it's too extreme. That would all not even be a consideration anymore. Then there's quantum teleportation, which we're going to talk about, which is just out there, and zero-point fuel that allows the elimination of one of the major obstacles to really efficient space travel. It could mean space tourism. There's a profit in that, I'm sure. And extraterrestrial resources could change our economy. Significantly, humans could become part of a larger intergalactic community. I think that's the part that I find the most interesting. Conversely, some groups might establish independent space colonies, challenging the concept of state sovereignty. So, are we ready for these sorts of challenges? And will those sitting on the technology relinquish the control? That's the real question. Let's talk about quantum teleportation. This is just crazy. Teleportation, it seems like science fiction, but it's cutting edge quantum mechanics right now, right today. People are working on this. And the manipulation of space-time suggests that it may not be impossible. Studies have achieved it on a quantum scale, or as I said, baby steps. So quantum teleportation of photons happened in 1997. The physicist Anton Zeilinger teleported, so moved something from one place to another without use of an external thing. I don't know how to explain it. We all know what teleportation means. They did a photon over a few meters, showing it is possible to transport information without a physical transfer. So theoretically, it would be possible to develop macro teleportation. But we don't yet have the ability to do it on a larger system, to teleport a larger system. So, like a human, um, because of quantum coherence, we don't know how to move many particles all at the same time and retain the stability of the structure. It's not like the teleporter in Star Trek, where you see the glittering lights and then people disappear and then the lights glitter and they come back. We're not at that point yet. We could do it like a subatomic particle, the information in a subatomic particle. People are a little bit more difficult. Things are a little bit more difficult. You might be able to transport them and they come with their ear on the top of their head. You know, that's the problem, is maintaining organization of the system. Retaining stability. Then there's fiber optics and satellites. In 2017, China transmitted a quantum state of a photon from space to the Earth, 1,200 kilometers, using a Mesius satellite and quantum entanglement. So, without pretending that I can explain what that means, we'll move on. There is hope that we will eventually figure it out on a macro level. That is one remarkable thing about people. We are tenacious in our desire to expand our knowledge. So there are some theories here that they can use for fast travel. The wormhole theory is that there are passages in space-time that allow instant movement between points. Some scientists, they named one Kip Thorne, they believe that they could keep that passage open, and they would need a lot of energy to manipulate the gravity to keep it open, but apparently that would be one way to travel quickly. Quantum interference, this is subatomic particles that can be in two places at one time because of quantum superposition. So the question is, would they be able to apply this on a macro level? And then Tesla is alleged to have experimented on electromagnetic fields. We know he created that tower. He wanted to alter space-time too. But his notes have been classified. The notes they found and took, they classified. His experiment is often linked, allegedly, to the Philadelphia experiment of 1943. And just briefly, because I've covered this before, and our friend, my subscriber here, and our friend Andrew came and talked about that. So that's something to look into. The Philadelphia experiment allegedly transported a naval boat from one place to another. Not completely successfully. That's all I'll say. So as with all of this book, this is speculation, and it implies a huge paradigm shift and a battle for control. And it repeats this over and over and over. So I just summarized that for you. There's the belief that the advances, especially with free energy, would lead to self-sufficient and sustainable cities integrated with the environment, that they would be independent from centralized grid structures. And there are examples. There's a place called Masdar in the United Arab Emirates that uses only renewable energy and advanced technology. I imagine they probably do well with solar energy there. I'm just guessing. It's not in the book. I'm just guessing. The line, as in the straight line, the line is in Saudi Arabia. It's a project for self-sufficient urban centers. They have no cars. They have like metropolitan transport. They have transportation for everybody with sustainable energy. and they have merged technology and ecology. But the crux of all of this is the access to energy. And there are really some interesting experiments. Now, I feel like in this book he got a little bit he kind of digressed from the topic at the Vatican momentarily, and I went through his digressions and I picked the things that were just really fascinating and have, I think, a lot of promise, and then some things that he got into that I am not going to explain in great detail, but I'll tell you why I didn't like them. Okay, so he talks about energetically active buildings. They generate more energy than they use. They use solar energy. They use hydrogen cells, which are like batteries, and intelligent photovoltaic facades. That's where they use the sun. They get energy from it with semiconducting materials, essentially solar paneling, but it's built into the composition of the exterior of the building. Fascinating. They have a local microgrid that would store and distribute the energy. There's an example at Brooklyn, the Brooklyn microgrid, and there were no details about it, but it does exist. And then the Freiburg one in Germany, which uses solar and wind power together. There are technologies that allow the conversion of heat from buildings to human use. So the buildings not only store the solar energy, they take the heat and they transfer it into energy. I guess, how would I describe the difference between that and just solar panels? The buildings themselves are being used to store the energy. So these cities will use advanced materials, and here's something that they actually have. I put all kinds of exclamation points because I couldn't believe it. Bio cement. Now this is cement, but they add bacteria of a special sort that when there's a crack in the cement, it self-repairs and it's activated by humidity. It's just phenomenal. They have nanotechnology in construction now where surfaces are able to adapt to environmental conditions to regulate temperature and insulate automatically. So they would be eliminating the need for air conditioning, I guess. Biometric architect, no, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Biomimetic architecture. These are really interesting. These are forms of buildings that take their cues for their design from nature. So they're modular, they're adaptable, they can be aerodynamic, they're resistant to weather events. Let me go into the past, not that far past, but the Hogans of the Southwest natives. There is a YouTube video. I didn't get a chance to look up the exact title. I don't think it would be that hard to find. I stumbled on it the other day. It was fascinating. It was about a young couple who are in the middle of nowhere in the American desert, somewhere in the Southwest, and they have built a house, and they're not finished, but what they've built is just remarkable. And it's these little kind of cone-shaped structures that are connected by hallways. So each one can continue the construction. It's difficult for me to describe. They have a main thing and then halls connecting to other main things, and they're all kind of in an enclosure, and they're made from dirt. They dig the dirt off the desert floor and use that. Somehow, they didn't go into that in great detail in the video that I watched, but they do something with the dirt, and they're making mud huts, but they're absolutely beautiful. And inside, they're as modern as could be. In the sense that they have stone floors. They gathered stone from the desert. They have, they use all of the resources lying around. And it was really remarkable. If you get a chance, I would recommend watching that. But these biomimetics, so they're copying the nature around them. And they're resistant to weather events, and that's something that is really intriguing to me because of their shape. They're aerodynamic. They don't, the roof doesn't fly off, that kind of thing. They're in harmony with their environment. Another thing that these cities do, these urban cities that are self-sufficient, is they have widespread green spaces. This increases the area to grow things, like food. It improves the air quality. It regulates temperature. There's a thing called heat islands, which occur in inner cities where there's nothing but buildings and cement, parking lots. The ground is all tarred over, cemented over, covered in buildings, and there's nothing growing. And trees and plants help to regulate the environment and make it more livable as far as air quality and temperature go. That would be replaced. They have something called vertical parks where they plant things on the buildings on the way up, and then green roofs of the buildings, they grow things. So this allows for urban architecture, and it reduces food costs. It improves nutrition. They have water systems that are based on community use and sustainability and limited waste. They have networks for the water that filter and reuse rainwater. They have solar-powered roads that generate energy and recharge vehicles in motion. Now, I don't think they're using those, but they've got the technology going now. So this is the part of the book where I just went, no, I'm not gonna push this. He talks about it. I'll let you know that he talks about it. I'm in disagreement with this. He's all about pushing crypto and AI because he praises the constant monitoring to improve the quality of life. I philosophically disagree with that. You may agree. And he goes into great detail, but I just couldn't bring myself to go into the details. So I apologize for picking and choosing, but there you go. Where are we going? Oh, he talks about it being the end of megacities, and I would think that's okay by me. And the decentralization of communities, which fosters a closer sense of community when you know people that you live with. And it spreads out the population and therefore the impact on the environment, increasing the sense of community, decreasing environmental impact. There's a thing called the Villages Project in the Netherlands. They're self-sufficient for energy and food. So there are some pilot programs that praise, this is just really hard to wrap your head around. He praises 3D printing of buildings and terraforming. So this so far is hypothetical. The 3D printing they can do, but the putting it together to create communities is hypothetical. And it's deliberately modifying an environment to make it habitable. So going to Mars and 3D building your habitat there, and then terraforming, making that planet's environment, we're in an area supportive of human life. And the part that they're not talking about is without regard to the health of the environment of the planet you're on. Just because it doesn't look like the Earth doesn't mean it doesn't have a habitat, an ecosystem. So I don't know, this invites a much deeper conversation. I don't know facts to support my gut feeling that we should not be doing this. We've already tried this as far as just plowing things over. Can I remind you of the Dust Bowl? This idea of terraforming is a suggestion for areas of the earth that are not right now habitable comfortably, like the poles, the Arctic and the Antarctic, desert spaces, that you could apply terraforming to make them habitable. So I'm not sure I agree with this. It makes me uncomfortable. I usually like to listen to that gut feeling that I get. The only thing where I could see it would be a necessity is if we degrade our planet so badly that we have no other choice but to save ourselves by doing that. NASA has something called the Mars Habitat Challenge, which is a challenge to build structures with 3D printing right on Mars, which we talked a bit about. It uses 3D printing, AI, robots, drones, and just the materials right on site. There's a project called the TECLA, T-E-C-L-A project, which is has built an entire raw earth house. They like to think about using those in extreme earth environments. They could be used for emergency shelters and shelters in natural disasters, which, emergency. They use the available natural materials without impacting the natural resources excessively. And then we have to talk about somehow he moved from talking about the Vatican to moving about advances in biomedicine, but we'll just talk a little bit about it. They're leading to things like resilient self-healing and programmable materials in buildings and changes in biomedicine. This involves both areas. Things that respond to environmental stimuli and self-adapt, buildings that can repair themselves, a whole list of new materials. I wrote them down, but they don't mean anything, I don't think. Like the names don't mean anything. So they have the self-healing bioconcrete and polymers and paints and coatings and programmable materials that are able to respond to their environment. They change shape, they absorb and release water, they can manipulate sound and thermal and light waves for telecommunication. MIT developed concrete that blocks sound frequencies to give you, relief from noise. Duke University has an optical metamaterial that deflects light, creating the illusion of invisibility, which has interesting prospects. He discusses the pros and cons of interplanetary colonization. I want to get to the health thing. I'm not into it. He advances that all of these topics are held close by the Vatican. There's the feeling that using some of this technology that's being hidden, we could actually advance things like we wouldn't need transplants, that we would have alternatives to that deafness and blindness could be, the limitations of them could be relieved because we would be using telepathy and just all these new ideas. He says that colonies are important on other planets because we need somewhere to go if Earth becomes uninhabitable. That begs the question, why don't we stop making it uninhabitable? But then he does talk about like if a meteor struck or something. But also it's very important, in his opinion, to exploit resources in space. But then there's the evolution of consciousness. So, this is a debate. So in conclusion, the impact of contact. Were the Vatican to come out and, be real, There's the increased evolution in science and technology, the shakeup of paradigms in religion and philosophy, the reordering of geopolitics. So his basic argument is the Vatican has to release this information because it would drive our evolution to the next level. And shared knowledge is inspiration, innovation, and new paradigms. That would be our future. They're holding us back. We could potentially contact life on other planets. We could progress in space exploration. We could expand beyond the limitations of our planet, gain new knowledge, gain it immediately, expand our awareness. This would be transformation. So that's the end of the book. And I have to say, I said this at the beginning and I'll say it again. Overall, I thought the book had some very interesting information. I feel like I learned a lot. The argument about the Vatican archives, I don't feel like there's enough evidence to support the argument that they're hiding alien technology. There are rumors. One or two people have said it. And out of those one or two people, one or two are kind of problematic. So I have mixed feelings about that. I think it's very important to keep open-minded skepticism. Is it possible? Yes. It's absolutely inarguable that there is information being withheld. The source of it, the depth of it, the breadth of it, that's what we don't know. But the most intriguing question is, what are they afraid of? Are they afraid of us and our reaction, or are they afraid of those in power and their reaction? It's very intriguing. It would make for a great conversation. And I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry, I can't get behind Bitcoin and AI. Sorry about that. Some of it may very well be inevitable, but I don't have to like it. So thank you. Thank you for watching. And let me know if you like this kind of book. And I something up my sleeve for next time. And in the meantime, slanga foil, slancha.